Hello everybody. I'm just getting things set up here. Let's see, yeah, it looks like now there's always a little bit of a lag time on my screen. I'm just getting myself set up over here with the secondary chat window because for whatever reason chat just doesn't want to work on screen here. Speaking of which, I'm just getting all that stuff set up. We'll get rid of this guy here. There. Got something brand new here, and yes, he does have another arm. We'll bring that in. This is a brand new sculpt here. This is from Creature Caster, and this is just the first of many new figures that they're going to be creating. You can see how big this guy is, essentially sort of a Warboss size. There's also another little piece here that we're going to paint separately, and that goes, I believe that goes right about here, let's say. Yeah, there we go. Those two spots go right there. It's a nice little cloud of smoke that's coming off of this. Here, we'll show you the back. Plenty of machinery and other fun things to mess around with. Lots of different metal surfaces. Obviously, plenty of room for some weathering and all that kind of good stuff. We're also going to use the ProAcryl paints. We'll focus on the transparents because everybody knows how much I love the Reaper Clear and liner paints. And I know people are into the contrast paints. We actually have a few of them out on the palette so that we can do a little direct comparison to some things. So yeah, we have plenty of these. We'll do some mixes with these. So we got them out here. So a bunch of transparents out there. This right here is actually the contrast green and the contrast the shyish purple. You can see we've got them lined up next to the transparent green and purple. And the transparent paints, I'm just going to bring up the Creature Caster website right here. And you can see, boom, there they are. There's the brand new transparent set. There's 8 of them right there. And that miniature that's right next to it, that big old guy right there, yeah, you're going to be seeing him soon as well. And Creature Caster, they make some of my favorite miniatures. This actually, I think it's got the Silver at Gen Con, right? In one of the categories, and I absolutely love it. You can see we use plenty of the Creature Caster paints. This is actually a tutorial that I did for my Patreon page. It was a 3-episode tutorial. I had lots of fun with this. Oh yeah, this was a real fun piece to do. But we're taking a whole different tack here. So we've got basically much more of a sci-fi look to this here. So that's going to be very fun. Hey there, Comitrion. Yes, I am live. This is me. I am alive, and I am speaking to you one on many. Now, one on 7 or 8, I think. Hey, Tim, how's it going? The bell squad. Yeah, what's that? You have to click on the bell. It's not enough to do the notifications. The lesson that I found out the hard way. Very, very close to buy the transparent. Well, let's play with some straight off the bat. And this is something people hear me talk about all the time, is that green and purple make some very interesting grays. So we're going to do stuff like that here. I'm going to mix these two together, see what kind of grays that we can get. Now, the interesting thing about these, straight off the bat, is that you can use water. You don't need the contrast medium. And all I need here is a little bit of opposite there. So that's some of the transparent brown. So it gives a little bit of a greenish effect. You can take some of the transparent black, make it even darker. And let's go just on some of these metal surfaces, like this one right here. So let's get a little bit of some purple in there. Let's get a little bit of our brown in there. This is something that's really hard to do with, say, the contrast paints. And some of you that just watched my recent live sessions with the weathering of those Mad Max style vehicles, I think you're recognizing what we're doing here. So we're just kind of letting this mix together. Now I'm going to crank up my brightness. Well, I don't have to crank it up too high. There we are. I need to get back to my chat here. Yeah, I'm just not a big fan of the contrast paints. Comiterion 89. They just, well, one thing I noticed as I'm using those suckers is that in no time at all the jars were empty, and I was not using them in the way that they were recommended to be used by any stretch of the imagination. I was using them quite sparingly. Now we're talking about grays. Well, look at see how that's just it's almost like a watercolor effect there. Look at it. You got the brown and the basically the gray mixing together. We'll do the same thing over here. For most folks, they're used to seeing me take the makeup sponges and wiping this away and sort of using it as an underpainting, almost like we were doing some oil painting. But here, since we want to do a little bit of a contrast, how's that? Yeah, say that 10 times fast. I don't think I could right now. Look at that. See how that just straight away, and look at you getting some lights and darks in there too. Yeah, the air console. Yeah. Um, what's the other thing I know as well? And availability is the best ability. I mean, that's a sports thing. I know, but it's a practical matter because if you can't get these things, and I don't know how many times I've gone on to, geez, even the Games Workshop website itself, and well, they're not there. You can't get them. That doesn't do me much good. Whereas with the Creature Caster paints now, sometimes when things are at the end of a production run or there's a big sale or whatever, then maybe you'll have one color that's maybe not available. I don't know. But I think you're far more likely to see GW colors be not available. So it's not a knock on GW stuff. It's fine. People love the contrast paints, but for me, there is just something that I love about. Look at this. See, once again, we're getting in some of our brown. It's all mixing together on its own. That if you did that with the contrast paints, you'd be getting watermarks. Do you see any watermarks here? I see none. There are no watermarks. So, like I said, this is a bit of a different way for me to work. So here we put some of the transparent black in there. We'll just work our way around the bottom of this space. Figured I'd start out with this and let people get a little bit of a sense of comparison, because this is how you're supposed to use contrast paints, right? You're supposed to do this over a basically a pre-shaded primer thing, because that's what we got here. That was done with this right here. Stynylrez primer. You could brush it on. You don't need an airbrush. We brushed this stuff on for years before I ever got an airbrush. First Last is in the house. Man. Yeah, it feels like just yesterday we were doing this. Well, that's because it pretty much almost is yesterday that we were doing one of these. So let's get down here and we'll do the same, similar type of a thing. So we start out, again, we got a little bit more of the greenish gray. Then we throw in some of our opposite color here, a little bit of that. That's the transparent brown. Now some more of the transparent black, but all the while thinking about in terms of contrast paints. Now, when I mentioned the makeup sponges, there's this. Boom. So let's say you wanted to bring back more of your pre-shading, so I just took some of that away. If you were to do that, oh, hey, Tyler, how's it going? Yeah, this should be really fun. I think, yeah. Now, I also got these lighter colors over here, and you'll see what those are all about, too. So I'm going to go up to here. Now, look at that. That's almost sort of a reddish green right there. But now, see, we'll shift it again. Look at all this nifty alteration of color. So I got a little bit of that transparent black. We'll let it all mix together. Let it do its thing. like I said, with contrast paints, a difficult thing to do. I have done it, but like I said, a little bit more prone to those watermarks and pooling. Just really nasty pooling. That is the other thing. Well, and I've seen it too, because I've got plenty of other videos on the contrast paints. There will be some, I might just put some links in the description because I think some of my end screens are going to have creature caster figures in them since, well, this is a creature caster figure. And again, it's scheduled for a fun release in October, kind of an Orktober thing. So let's take some blue and some brown together. And like I said, the whole idea of this is to just make as many different grays as we can. It just keeps things more interesting. And then as I get down into some crevices here, I'm going to take some of that green, mix it with a little bit of red. All I'm trying to do is just get some skin tone or just something dark. That's all I'm looking to do is just get some darks down there in those crevices. Because I can always go again back over this. And this is the other thing that's fun to do. So I'm taking some of the, oh gosh, that is the Wondrous Faded Ultramarine. We'll mix that into some of this here. Let's get a little purple into that. Touch more of the, again, the transparent purple. And look at, you can do this. It's just much tougher to do that with the contrast paints. Again, the whole idea, this is not supposed to be some pristine engine right here. It's an orky thing, so we want to have lots of different colors working on this. Plenty of different colors available out on the palette, that's for sure. And we always have our makeup sponges. We can, like I said, pull some of this away. So it starts to reveal a little bit more of the shape. What do we want to do now? Let's hit some of these shapes here. So now we've got some of the, see there's a little bit opaque in there now. Just a little more opaque. I'm going to go back into some of the purple, green, gray. Back into a little bit of the transparent black, some of the transparent brown. I'll let this do its thing. Again, create those darks and middle tones. Because people, what I can, and we just talked about this on the last live episode, where people, they will do their darks just, okay, it's got to be black. You know, let's say you got a red cloak. Everyone is, okay, we are going to shade this red cloak and we're just going to shade it black. Well, your shadows will be dark. No doubt about that, because you're using black. They'll be dark, but they'll be absolutely dead. There will be no color whatsoever in those shadow areas. What if you were to take a dark blue and use that to shade those reds a little darker? Creates a few different things you get, especially if you're using some kind of yellow to lighten your reds, which is really what you want to be doing. Now you're going to get some automatic, I call it stealth contrast. We're adding some brown and some black here down in these crevices because you have the cooler shadow color because you got the blues in there, and then you have the warmer lights. So again, a whole different type of contrast other than just lights and darks, other than just red versus green. There's lots of different ways of doing that. Here, let's get even some more just transparent brown. Look at that. So see, there's a whole kaleidoscope of different colors at work here. Now I can finally, I'm just going to lock that in. I just needed to switch my focus a bit. Here, let's go towards something that's a little more of a blue here. Back to the brown. And I have to remember there's the flames or the smoke, which I want to do a bit like this. So see that on the back of that? That's what we're going to have coming out of here. So there's also going to be some object source lighting there. But right now we're going to set that up. We're not gonna have much in the way of object source lighting if we don't have something that's dark back there as a backdrop, as a setting, but also we need something that's, well, a little bit on the cooler side. Skin tone wise, I don't know if I'm going to be going with the typical green. I might go with something that's more of a grayish brown. We'll see. It depends on what the metals are like. I always like to leave those options open, and that's the benefit. You notice I'm working on the whole figure all at once here. We're not just working on one small part of it. We're working on the whole thing all at once. Now here, I might actually let this be a little bit lighter. So what we're going to do is, maybe this allows for some more chipping and such. So we just put all that light color there, and now into that, I'm going to go in here with some of the transparent brown. And maybe even go back into here. This is fun too. So we're going to take a little bit of lighter color. Look what we're doing. We're just putting a few where there's the wet paint. Over here, same thing. Let's let that mix a little bit. It sort of creates a bit of weathering, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Even now, just the variations that we have already will be helpful later on down the line. Now again, looking for some dark. By adding the transparent black in there, essentially I'm turning that almost into like a blue liner paint. A little bit of the purple in there, back to some of the transparent brown. Now this, just because of the shape of this and everything else, I let that be darker. So I can go back in with a makeup sponge and take some of that away. Again, it starts to reveal some of the underlying shading that's already there. I'm going to put out a little bit more, and that is again, the transparent brown that we're working with. I'm going to get back to the old chat there. So you can see that has a lot of red to it. Where are we at? Doing some more of these back panels here. We'll let that get darker. We can always go back in. Now this stuff that's on the underside here, you can't really see that, so I'm not going to play around with that too much. Back to our transparent brown. Back to my almost bluish color there, a little bit of the purple. Some of the black. Again, just right now, I have to get down into all of these recesses. Stuff that you cannot see, but I have to do. Alright, let's play with some skin tones here. We've got basically a brown that looks a little bit on the grayish side here. Let's put some of this, a little bit of pink in there. The one thing you got to know about the Creature Caster paints is that when you add, well, all the lighter colors really have a plenty of coverage. So when you add those to the transparents, now they're not quite so transparent. So again, we're messing around with a slightly different type of skin tone here, but you can see we're still almost applying it as if it were a glaze. Look at that. Some purple got in there. See how that changes the skin tone a little bit. Because we'll probably do some purple shadows, I think. And we got some more skin tone here. Feet, we can always let that dry. We'll get to this one down here. I can even use this on some of the cables. As people have heard me say many times, if a color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere. And that's why it's going to start to go down on the base here too. And let's see, what are we looking at here? It's been, what, 20 minutes-ish that we've been painting on this, and we've already got some substantial coverage on this. See, we're going to do a little different color metal here. We're taking this mix, and boy, it looks light here, but it's really not light. It's barely a middle tone, but it's all relative. This is why I say if you got black primer all over everything and you paint just one part of him, now that's fantastic, but you have to realize that everything next to black looks light. So when you start to paint in those lighter colors, inevitably your first layers are going to look a little unusual. And say, what's going on here? So I got more darks just to get things covered. Like this, whatever that may be. And we can even let that dry for a little bit, and then we can play with this. Here, let's get ourselves some of our gray mix there. I don't know if I'm going to do that necessarily as some sort of a power maul or whatever. Maybe just a hammer. I don't really see, it doesn't have one of those kind of power hookups to it, so we'll just go with a straight up, just kind of a hammer. Big old bludgeony tool thing. Another highly technical term. We love our highly technical terms on the workbench. So again, we can take that sponge, we can take away some of the excess here. Dirty orc skin, yes indeed. Oh, thanks Tyler. Yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun little exercise here. Because I'm trying to think, in the last figure I painted at all that was 40k in nature, I can't remember. And we're talking years. Yeah, so it's been a long time. Okay. The smoke here, we're going to just set that aside for right now. I'll make sure my palette's in the right spot. Now we got all these lighter colors here. That means we can start to mix those in with everything we've already got out here. So we'll make sure you can see this. And now we can start to go back in here and start to put in some middle tones, some lights. But this is, again, this is nowhere near a highlight. It's essentially just a light middle tone, if that much. So I'm just going to go right in here. Because all of that, see the difference between that? We got almost some brown on this side, almost more of a bluish color on this side. But then when we put this color over the top, we can leave those other nifty colors sort of down in the recesses there. There, we can get ourselves some lighter colors here. all the while just thinking of ways to add something. But yeah, that's semi-transparent right there. That is the kind of thing that I'm looking for. Even on these panels here. And because we already have our darker colors in place and there's some variety to them, we don't have to necessarily work as hard at this stage either. And we're also going to do a whole bunch of weathering over the top of this. Well, why would we want to just sit here and sweat it out for hours and hours painting all these delicate shapes? Now let's go. I think these maybe will be more of a, I want to say more of a chrome, but something that's not maybe quite so rusty here. Maybe not quite so rusty. And you can see, look at this, we can go back in here now. Look how I'm using the side of the brush. And I'll show you the brushes in a second here, but look, we're going to go like full filbert style here. And watch what we can do. Watch how we can just scumble away. We can even, say, take some of that pink. See, we're doing a little bit of wet blending right here. Check that out. So all of a sudden now we start to get ourselves a little more shape. Now we need some reflected light down here. Well, yes, we want the darks and the shadows. Well, we also have to have some kind of reflections of light there. But we still have our darker tones. Again, we'll take some of the paint out of the brush. Basically do a quick little wet blend. So this it's light, then it goes to darker, and then light again down there on the underside as we get that splash of reflected light from the underside. I'm also, obviously, I'm accelerating the pace as well. You probably won't be working quite this fast. Although, I mean, speed is a thing for everybody. I know people would say, well, Jim, you gotta work fast. This is what you do for a living. You need to get those commission pieces finished, and that is definitely true. But how often do you guys get to paint? I do this 7 days a week, 10 to 20 hours a day. Most people don't quite have that much time to spend on their miniature painting. So in effect, you guys need to be able to at least make some good progress quickly on your own stuff. So look at how that just, in no time at all, it went from, it looked like that was light. Well, it wasn't light. And there's no white on this palette anywhere, that's for sure. Nothing even close to that. It's all about creating that context. I'm just going to assume that those get sort of worn down, so that's why we've got those a bit lighter. So let's going to go a little bit lighter here on this. I can even along these shapes start to get some more of that lighter color there. But remember, I don't want to do too much here, because if we're going to have that sort of object source lighting on that, well, all of this becomes pointless. Even on this, all of these things, they're all going to get hit with a lot of that object source lighting. So this is why I'm not really going to sweat these sections too much with lots and lots of shading. What I will do though is probably get out some fluorescent paints for this, because that other thing I showed you, that had the fluorescence on it. Usually use Vallejos, but I think we found some scale 75 colors that also work for that. I always try to present different options. That's why I know for the longest time it was all about the Reaper Clear and liner paints, and then when the contrast stuff came out, people said, "Hey, could you give us alternatives to the clear paints? We can't necessarily get them here in Europe or whatever." So that's what I did. Was basically figured out the equivalent of those, and that's why I've got several episodes. And I did even more on the Patreon page. You can see that the blog is flashing across the bottom of the screen there. There are thousands more articles on the blog, so you can check those out too. Terrain. Well, heck, there's battle reports on there. I also have battle report videos on the YouTube channel. Now, I don't want this to get too close to that brownish color. Here, I'm going to make this a little bit more. See, that's almost just a straight green right there. Who would have thought green armor and brown skin? Nowhere near that quick. Been trying to speed paint lately. Well, it's you got the bigger brush, so just naturally you're going a little bit faster, and you're able to do some of the wet blending things. Heck, I just used my finger right there. Finger painting doesn't take that much time, but it is definitely a practice thing, and I guess that's the thing too with a lot of the videos that I've been doing. They focus in on especially on the army painting side of things, because just for whatever reason lately, just a rash of people that I see, they're just kind of giving up on painting altogether. They just don't enjoy it anymore. And that's kind of a shame. I hate to see that, because I love doing the miniature painting, and I know they did. And why did it cease to become fun? Now it was too much like work. It was like another job on top of all the other jobs. And if I can, with these sort of techniques and methods, just make it seem a little less daunting, simplify things a little bit, then maybe you'll have a little more success in meeting those sort of expectations and deadlines that you set for yourself. We all kind of do that. We definitely are our own worst critics. Now, see, we're going in here with taking advantage of those initial washes, which actually they're still wet. Look at this. They're still wet in some of these places, but yet we can go in here, start to pick out some of these panels. And just think of how huge and complex this thing is. But what did we do? We broke it down into much simpler, easier to handle chunks. Yet we were working on the whole thing all at once. Now, are you going to get that instant gratification of, oh, look at the face is done? That's fantastic. The face is done. You now have the entire 93% of the rest of the figure to paint. Now you have to paint around your face, because that was that was something that certainly happened to us when we first started with the painting thing, and we did it just like everybody else. You prime it black, right? You layer up endlessly. Nah, that didn't work out so well. At least not for speed. And then, like I said, that possibility of, oh yeah, well, maybe that was way too light. So again, here only doing minimal stuff on that because we have to be thinking about all of the object source lighting. So you have plenty of other panels down here. But look at all these different gray colors I have to choose from. So I'll take some of that blue, mix it in with the brown. I have a whole nother color that's a little bit on the warmer side. Looks darn near pink by comparison to some things. But now we can lighten up those panels. We can even have a little more brown into that. Look at that. It's again, it's a whole different tone than what we had. Now we're going to take something that's darn near a green here. Let's do some of that over here because we've got that. If we're going to do the brown skin tone, we want something that's going to contrast with that. And what better way to, well, we have red and green positioned next to each other. Except the nifty thing is, the people looking at this, they are not going to say, well, look at that. Look how clever they were to place red next to green. They're just going to go, okay, yeah, that's a neat brownish flesh tone. They're not going to see that difference. But this is fun right here. So we have that brownish undertone, but now the green over the top. I know sometimes it'll be tough for you to see exactly. Just because where I have to hold it and where the camera is. So I'm going to focus more on the reverse lighting than again on the... And I'm just going to go into this area a bit here on the metals. Here, let's get ourselves some of the transparent brown back out here. But what if we don't want to use transparent brown? We got red, right? And we got green. Oh, let's just make ourselves a brown. So some red, some green. I know people get really afraid of mixing or just tense about it. Doesn't have to be. Does not have to be a tense thing at all. Just apply a little bit of logic to it, and you'll be surprised at what you're able to do. So see, we just gave that a reddish tinge right there. We're going to do the same thing on the opposite side here. Heck, I still have some of my initial washes that are in there. So again, a little more of a red there. Kind of the equivalent of a secret weapon old rust. See, we'll put that down in here. So some nice dark, almost like a rust color right there. But I don't know, let's say it goes from maybe a rust color to the hair color. Where are we at here? I think we're on screen. Like so. Here, let's get a little bit of darker tones where we need some here. And like I said, don't be all shy about using your finger on stuff. Why be afraid? It's just a miniature. That's all it is. Just a miniature. Now I'm going to get some of that red here. Some of these shadow areas. And we've got some of his leg over here too. Now, do I want to get some of that down in the shadows? See, I'm going to take a little bit of yellow to that. Completely changes it around again. So now it's more of a, see, it's more of a straight up brown. And even at this point, I can still wipe some of that away. So it's not only the initial glazes where you can do that little trick of wiping the stuff away. may just get myself some touches of that brown there too. Color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere. So some of that same brown. Now I can put it on the foot there because it's dried enough. As I said, there's some areas I may not even really paint at all, just because, well, if you can't see them, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good to be watching me paint things that you can't watch, if that makes any sense. So see, I'll let some again. That is that skin color that I used. Speaking of skin color, let's start experimenting here. That's just water in there, by the way. I may have mentioned it already, not sure. Let's take a little bit of our paint. Look at that. See how the green comes out? Look at that. That's because there's green in the mix. That's because, and look at here. Does it look like green at all? No, it just looks like another gray color. But can you see the difference? That's got that more of that purple type color, and that's a little more of the green. So I'm definitely going to use some of that down here. So all of a sudden now the metal plates have a difference one between the next. Some of these will be much darker. That's obviously it's one way. But it's also fun to have, like here, some of this green in there. So we'll just get rid of some of that. Get rid of some of the extra and poof. Change that here. Let's get a little change of color in here. See a little bit of green there in that metal. Let's do the same thing here. Let's get some green in there. Just because. And I'm going to get rid of some of that excess paint there. You can even get a little bit of that in the anvil here. Look, we can do some streaking. Here, let's hold the brush on an angle here. Hey, Andre, how's it going? Yeah, this is the creature caster orc right here. Now, this is not the last time you'll see me painting this, because Jason and I, actually what we're going to start doing, we're just working out the technical side of things. We want to do some side-by-side live streams. We're hoping to work out those details and give that some tests in October and see how that all works. Because we obviously, we paint in two different ways. But also, Jason's the person that made the paints that we're using. So you have the chance to talk to the person, the mind behind the paints. And then the way he uses those and sort of the way he envisioned. And then, then there's crazy people like me that completely break everything and do it as it was absolutely not intended to be used. But that's kind of how all these things go. See, we're giving that both of these slightly different color now. But also, always keeping in mind that the ProAcryls, once you start adding those lighter colors in there, you lose that transparency. The more of the non-transparent you put in, it gets really opaque. So just, something to be aware of. I think there's a little bit of a chain right there. I'm going to get some of this green into here. So we went from really absolutely no shape whatsoever, no tonal differences. Now we're starting to get some of those tonal differences that we're after. We still have a long way to go with lights and darks. Looks like he's doing professional arm wrestling. Yeah, well, it's here. Let's get that in place. So that's kind of where that goes. So it gives us sort of a nice flaming type of thing going on. And like I said, for those that haven't seen it, this is what we're looking to do. Something like that. Johnny Bravo style, yes indeed. Now I think you can see the pinkishness here, the greenishness there. And as I, well, a little bit more of the pink to this to lighten that up, it'll shift away from the green and become more, well, basically more neutral. I try not to bop around too many painting terms. If I do, I'll try and say, you know what, this is all it really is. It's a fancy sounding thing for this. And just leave it at that. Because I know I was never thrilled with that. There would be people that would, throw terms at me. So we're taking some of the red and green, mixing it together. It makes ourselves a nice little kind of a purple type color there. All right, let's start to play with our skin tones here. Add a touch of the yellow to it, a little bit of that pink to lighten it up. And go back to my brown. Again, that's the transparent brown. Let's see what we get skin tone wise. Oh, actually I see some spots there. That's just actually a brush stroke. That could be fun, putting some spots there. So see, we just mixed up a skin color that's an awful lot like what we started with there. And it was a simple thing. We just took some of the transparents that were out there. We made them slightly more opaque and lighter by adding some of the regular ProAcryl light colors. Again, didn't have to be fancy. Oh, thanks, Andre. I can't wait to do that on here. As soon as I saw this guy, I said, oh, I got to do that. And it's funny because when I was thinking of doing that, I didn't quite realize that all the machinery is on this end, which means, boku amounts of metals that can be get that non-metallic metal, but also the OSL effect on them. So that's going to be really fun. Now here again, the benefit of having transparent paints as part of this mix is that it doesn't cover all the way. I get some of that stuff underneath to show through. Some of that underpainting will come through. Let's get some lights here on this leg, a little bit lighter on the foot, although I don't necessarily want the skin tone to be the exact same colors everywhere. If it's a little darker down here and almost, what was it, the Urukai color was a really like a dark tone. So let's see what we've got here. Let's grab ourselves one of these guys and we can lighten this up a little bit more. I just want to establish, okay, what are the lightest areas of the face? And if it starts to get too pink, so I'm going to throw in some of the yellow there. Let's grab some of the brown again. It's getting a little too pink. Yeah, that's better. Getting a little bit too pink, a little bit too fast. We don't need that. And like I said, I could have gone with the traditional sort of green or skin tones, but, well, I've painted that before. It's not like there's anything wrong with green skin tone. But I thought this might be an interesting, something different for people to see. Maybe try it on their own orcs. I will be, as part of my, well, eventually when all of the infantry, the Creature Caster infantry comes out, I'll be doing army painting series on those. But I've got just some regular orcs that I'll be doing another, again, that's an army painting series. Actually, I'm working on some Necrons right now. I think that's Army Painting Series 13. Again, part of the Patreon page. Now, look at this. See the difference that starts to make? And we're just, none of this, no super details or anything like that. We're just playing around with some colors, just pushing them around. Yeah, letting some of that other stuff show through. If we want to go a little lighter, I have to do that same thing. I've got to, if I'm going to grab some of that pink there to lighten up, I have to grab some yellow also. And we have his teeth there. We'll hit those two. Well, we're trying not to get too absorbed into any kind of details. I just want to lay down a bit of a reference here. Because this face is not, it's not really huge. We'll put it that way compared to everything else. So it can sort of get lost in the shuffle. So that's why I want to say, okay, this is about as much interest as I can add with this as far as lights and darks. Then, what if I did take some greens and put some of that in the shadows of his flesh tone? How smooth do I want the texture of the skin to be? I didn't see it properly, but it looks only primed still. Yeah, that's just the primer right there. No paint on that yet. I'm just working my way through this for right now, getting the face as well established as I can. Wanted to see if that flesh tone was going to work. And definitely glad I went with that. It's definitely a nice difference from the metals. There's a lot of skin texture on here. That's sort of the nifty thing about the digital sculpting, is that, let's say you want to do someone that's a humanoid, but give them sort of a draconic look. You can make that skin and give it that nice scaly texture, but still have it be vaguely human-like. So here, let's get a little bit of this onto our skulls to make sure that those don't get lost. I went from a skin color to a skull color, just like that. Again, you can't see those too well, so I'm not really going to focus in on that much. I think we will go one step lighter again, taking some of that transparent yellow. And we're just using cheap little craft brushes right here also too. I mean, this brush probably cost, sorry about that, about, I don't know, 20 cents. But you can see it gets the job done. Now I'm just gonna mark in a few teeth here. I'm gonna add some more darks to things like the mouth and such. But there's something else I want to earmark here, and that is some of these wires. Let's start to get a little more color into this. Let's see if there's any more of these. Yep, there's another one down there. So I'm gonna go, I got blue over here. Here. Put that right there. Another nice way to make our skin color stand out, sort of by default by putting all these other bright colors around it. So it's some of that contrast green. Just put that right there. So plenty of different colors of wires and such. I may just go green with this one too. And I think there's a bunch of them on the back side here too. Yeah, all kinds of wire colors. Let's go with maybe a green right here. There's some cabling. There's wires, cabling, all kinds of different stuff. Now I'm going to get back into... So there we just sort of made ourselves what looks like a yellowish green, but instead we're almost going to apply it like it's a metal color. Maybe let's find ourselves a few lighter metal colors. That was the Faded Ultramarine. Blue with a touch of the pink there. Because with all of the skin tones that we've done here, we need to start to see, okay, what's the stuff around it going to look like? And again, I'm just now trying to keep in mind all of that object source lighting that's going to happen. So let's not go too nuts adding all these lights. Yeah, that can even be... So it can go a little brighter on some of these now. And again, those, since they would be... There's so much wear on those, they just wouldn't be rusted necessarily. Now, the whole thing with the rust, it can be too much in such a hurry. It can just go from 0 to 1,000,000 in no time flat. Yeah, we got the chain right here. As far as the assembly on these things go, as I paint some of these things on his legs, I learned as I put this together, these maybe put these on sooner rather than later, because I put these on after a lot of the big equipment and such, and it just, well, now I was trying to get these placed in underneath that, so that's just a little word to the wise right there. Now, I got my green up here. Look at that, some red. Where's my, yeah. I want to get to some of these panels on the back that are a little bit darker. Even some of this here. Then we talked about, well, is green going to work as a potential sort of a shadow color or for our skin tone here? Let's try it. So I'm putting that in in his eyes here. So it's more than just adding some darks. What are we going to put in some of these recesses here? What if we go with some kind of greenish colored eyes? Let's try that and see what that does. Get the other one. Let's put some of that green around elsewhere. And all the while I've got my other colors in place. See how that plate just looks so much more interesting with all these different colors on it? do that on the other side here. Now again, not as much because there's a strong possibility of having some of the object source lighting take over there. But I will get some of that. There's some more armor down here that we haven't touched yet. There's some in here. This is why I like to work in all areas of the figure at the same time. Just building evenly along the way. Don't get locked into just any one area for too long. You do that, it's just kind of fraught with problems. Lots of issues can happen there. Again, as I put some lights on here, I have to think what's going on over there. I just have to remember, don't go too crazy adding lights here. Now this is eventually going to get hit with some soot because obviously these are smokestacks here, or exhaust. I just wanted to mark that a little bit here. We got some spikes here that I just want to, I'll hit those and then go back over that later. So we're just trying to find where are the raised areas here. Because I can always go back in and glaze some darker stuff over the top. Like that. Here. Just catch that little bit of an edge. Some of these surfaces just to say, well, we know it's there. Can you see that? I'm going to turn it over here. Maybe even a little bit of, what would you call it, a little bit of reflective light there. And we'll get some more of that. That's more of that greenish color on some of these panels. It's a little lighter too. A little bit lighter. Let's get some on these ground panels. See, I'm knocking the brush over on its side. Try not to forget something like the base. That's important. Now what I'm going to do is set that aside for a second. Let's get some action on this here. Now we have to remember where's our contact point here. So our orange stuff is going to be congregating over there. Now I'll throw out some of the fluorescent orange here. And I guess something to keep in mind when you're going to use something like that, that it looks like it should cover a lot, but it's not going to cover hardly at all. So that's just the regular yellow, not transparent yellow. We are going to mix a touch of that in with that yellow. And let's see, where's our two? Here's our sources right here. I'm doing this now because we have to sort of, well, put this stuff in there and then let it dry. So this is the part where we're going to let it dry. And again, the idea is we want it to be looking like this, which is why we're starting out kind of in the depths of this with the yellows and oranges. And it's interesting because they look so dark right now, but then as we put the other colors over the top, that really changes things. Here, let's just lighten that up even more. Like I said, I just want this to dry. So we're going to just throw it out here now and then let it go. Like you do. And let's get a little more of our fluorescent orange in there. And that looks nice and ugly and horrible. But now we just set that aside to dry. And we go back to this. Let's find ourselves again some lighter colors in areas that are not going to be affected by the, as much at least, by the object source lighting. There we go. Now this plate that's back here, yes, I can put all kinds of light colors on there, but if I do, first of all, what if there's a lot of object source lighting that's supposed to happen there? We basically spent a whole bunch of time painting something for nothing. That's why I'm going to focus on this other side, away from the object source lighting on this. On this stack here. So some light on that side of it. We will add a few more lights down here. It's all a little bit too dark. Here's again some of our initial, that purple gray mix that we made. You can see where that's going to go now on his. So it's in the shadow area. So we want it dark anyways. Here, let's get some of that on this anvil too. I said, don't be afraid to use your finger to wipe some colors away. Like we're using the side of the brush again. But see how we're letting some of the original washes underneath show through. Now you could do tons of glazing and all other kinds of stuff. Layer after layer after layer, that's fantastic. But in the end, if it's just going to look like this, why do all the extra work instead of just kind of going right to this? It's just about maximizing your time. Because absolutely none of us has infinite amount of time to work on our projects. That's just how it is. So, and some of my metals here, again, some of it's more green. Now we have some metals down there on the base here that almost have a little bit of a purple tinge by comparison. And then when we put our actual, honest to goodness, rust effects over that, you won't see any of that. There, so like I said, the whole idea of this is just keep that variety. All those fun variations in color. Now, if you were doing this, I don't know, if you want to do, was it Bad Moon, I think, right? There aren't those, they're basically yellow, or you got the Gorbad, no, oh gosh, I forget, your red faction. If you want to paint all this an actual color, well, that's fine. But there's just something about having a bunch of different, just sort of bare metal colors. that's sort of fun and entertaining. So you can go over the top of that, tone some of that down. Now let's grab, here it is. Let's grab this and we'll play with this. Now this is the angle that it's being held at here. So I'm going to get in now with some of our metal colors here. Again, it's a little bit more of a purple almost, but we work with what's there already. So this has a little more of a reddish tinge to it. But we always have our green nearby. See, we can even do let's try a little bit of wet blending on some of this. Here, I'm going to go with a touch of that's the faded ultramarine blue. And I think you can see how that gets a little bit lighter there. Now we'll take some of that paint away, and now we're just going to mix it together. And that's not just the lights creating that shadow there, that's actual shading. Now over the top, I'm going to say maybe we want almost more of a greenish light effect. And right in here. Now again, I can also do some washes of rust type colors over that if I want to tone that down. But for right now, let's get a little more of the purple in there. Yeah. A little bit different, look to that now. So we have some green in there, we have some purple. It's all going to register to the eye as just basically gray. And I'm going to get that little stripe of that there. We've got this side of it too. I think at a certain point I'll glue this thing on also. I just thought maybe it could be interesting for you to see this painted separately. Especially these days, I mostly just paint everything assembled. I used to paint a lot of things in sub-assemblies. Once I started to paint more things in oils, actually, that habit just kind of died away. Because I will definitely be making some creature caster painting videos in oils just because, well, I love using oils. It's just so much fun. So I'm going to just get my focus here real quick. Make sure that's all good for you. So we have some lighter purple with the backdrop behind it that has a tiny hint of that green. Speaking of the green, let's go back to that. So see, we got our green over here. Maybe that's a little too light. And now we'll work around, yeah, see, around this. It's not just slightly darker, but also has a whole different color to it. But when you look at it, they'll just say, oh yeah, that's okay, it's gray. Now we've just shifted it more towards that sort of a purple type color. Alright, sometimes I have to hold it on an angle that's good for me, and it's not necessarily the best angle for the screen. It's sort of the hazards of doing these live things. Because you can't always have it at just the ideal angle for people to watch. So now you see how we got that light to dark there, and now that the paint's a little drier, you don't have the reflections of the lights bouncing off of that. Now, let's not forget our skin tone on his hand. Just put that in real quick. Nothing terribly fancy because we just want it to be in the general vicinity of what we did on the rest of him there. So we'll set this aside and we'll go back. We'll go back to him. And I don't want to bore you with too many just, okay, look at this, we're doing yet another shade of green or purple on some metals, yay. I think I will, maybe, in the not too distant future here, do just some rust on some of these things. That's going to make a difference in what we do with our skin tone, believe it or not. Because now we're taking the metals away from that cooler purple green. Speaking of purple green, we're adding a little bit of a cooler green right here. It's just, again, some reflected light here. Speaking of reflected light, let's reflect a little bit of the skin color onto this metal here. Like that. And then maybe, let's even try a little bit of reflected light on his skin. And let's make that almost a little bit on the purple side. So just a little underlighting here. Just bear with me if you can't see it too well. He's kind of on the heavy side too, so don't want to drop him down onto the palette. That would be less productive. Here, let's get some of this into his leg over here too. That's more of that reddish brown. And like I said, in areas like this where you really can't see, I will not get too involved with it. Because as much as I'd love to just do this for 6-7 hours, well, you guys don't really have 6-7 hours to check this out, so you can see how that the shadow color starts to change there a little bit. Definitely starts to change. See, we're getting some of the grays in there now. Why is that happening? Well, just because that's the junk that's in the brush. As we like to call it, palette sludge. He loves our palette sludge. It's a favorite color. Get a little more of this sort of purple gray working its way into the skin tones like that, into those shadow areas. Let's see if we can't find ourselves some more lights in the skin tone. This is just that's the transparent brown with some of the pink I want to see, because there's this texture right here on the skin. It's hard to even describe it, but it seems, yeah, I need to catch up because this side here on the cheekbone, it's a little bit raised up there, so I want to do the same on the other side there. And I think the forehead too just needed to be more defined with some lights. Let's get some straight up. I want to get some purple into here. And I don't even know. Yeah, see, it's barely even noticeable as that purple there, but it's, you know, one other color in the skin tone. On that side, won't work in too much because we know there's object source lighting on the way. I need some of this yellow here. It's getting a little too much towards the red. So we are just focusing in now mostly on some skin tones here. I just want to find out how light can I make this. Yeah, I'm glad I'm starting to find some of the additional texture in the face here. You got some of the brow ridges and such. And we'll just let's see if we can get some lights on some teeth there, make those stand out a little more. And then let's see what we can do with our green here. Let's lighten that up a touch. Again, this is more about the eyes here. I mean, it is a decent sized head. Here, let's get some. Let's take some of the transparent black. This is essentially almost like the liner type paints that I like to use. But instead with the ProAcryls. I really need some. I want to get some definition around the. So we got his. Started to get his eye in there. Let's see what we can do on the other side. A similar type of thing. Sometimes it's just easier. Let's not make him. Here, let's get like that. And I want him looking down, because if I have him looking out this way, it doesn't make much sense. He would probably be looking down at whatever. So we talked about some purple on the hair. We're going to do that now. Make it a little darker. But all the while, we still have our transparent brown handy. Now, let's see if I want to. I don't think I want to use red. And no, so I'm going to go. That's the purple right there. Let's see if I can create a little more, oh, I don't want to say fracturing, but just some texture lines there in his face. Get some separation on his teeth here. Nope, that's going to be too much. We got to get some yellow into that. Now, what do we do here? Because if that's all just very light, so I know sometimes people like to have practically the purple lips on the orcs. I've been curious exactly when the whole purple lips on orcs started. What was the genesis for that? Okay, let's get ourselves, and go back into some greens here. Again, we're not looking to necessarily do eyeliner on them, but see how we got that separation now? Now you can see it. See that the separation that happened there? It's easier to just make that whole thing dark and then add in the light after the fact like this, or some middle tone, than it is to try and draw in those eyebrows and eyelids and everything. Just so much easier. Let's see if I can just looking in to throw some green. And maybe that's what happens around the lip instead of the purple lips. Maybe this is where we throw in some of the green here. I don't want to say like 5 o'clock shadow, but yeah, maybe. I'm actually kind of liking that. I am going to warm that up to be more of a yellowish green though. Okay. Get more of the yellow into that green. I don't want to forget about the rest of the skin tone here. We got plenty of that to do. And like I said, none of this is a final anything as it regards to the skin, because I'm going to find myself some... Aha! What do we got here? Magenta. Oh, where can we... Where's a decent place to throw this on the palette here? Oh, how about there? Don't need much. And the idea is to take some of that, some of our purple here. It's a transparent purple and the magenta. And let's... There. Because where these things, basically almost like a bit of a irritation in the skin. We'll even maybe do some of the, some veins or whatever. But where we've got these things sort of plugged in and grafted into the skin, where I think you can see we got some of that magenta working now. Did use some neon paint for the yellow shine in the smoke. Yeah, that was, again, there's also the yellow too. We'll probably be using both of these. There we go. Those are from, like I said, scale 75. I'm going to get myself some more yellow out here, though. Now we're going to go back to our bigger brush here. We'll hit this again. Now you can see it's starting to look a little more along the lines of orange. Get some more of the fluorescent orange in here, and all the while thinking, all right, where's my sources here? So with each layer of this, it starts to just look more fiery. Now, I also have transparent orange. Well, let's put a little bit of that out on the palette too. I'm going to go in with a little more of the fluorescent orange. I'm going to actually move my water out of the way here. I just need some palette space. Okay. And as we put some of this transparent stuff over the top, it starts to happen fast. At first it just is like, what in the world is that? And then kind of out of nowhere, it's just, oh, okay, that's what's going on. And just as soon as the darker colors start to get added, it starts to make sense. It looks a little bit less like cotton candy or a Cheeto. Actually, right now it's looking a lot like a Cheeto. Which, boy, that's actually making me hungry right now. But Cheetos at 3:42 a.m. probably not the best idea. And where there's still some wet paint, well, we just let it mix. Scan some of the fluorescent orange, touch of that yellow, but transparent orange. So a lot of this stuff still very translucent at this stage. But then at a certain point, I do have to even let that dry. But while I have it out here, I'm going to take my Cheeto and I'm going to put it next to the spot where it's supposed to go, which is here. So I'm going to now start in on some of the glowing effects here. So I'm just going to put the Cheeto aside. And let's do this thing. And you notice it's almost like I'm putting a glaze on there. Because I'm using the transparent paints. And I know that I think Jason got a kick out of this term when I just called it a dry glaze. Because look at how transparent that is. We can see a lot of the stuff underneath there. But that's the whole point of this. Look at this. See, I can just dust this right over the top here. You notice we didn't get too, that's why we didn't get too involved in all of these metals here, because a lot of this is going to have our object source lighting on it. We try to establish this as early as possible. Here I had to do all of this underlayment first. Had to get all of this in before I could even do this, because normally that is one of the very first things I start to work on and set down into place is the object source lighting. Look at us. So all this stuff now, even here on the skin, all this stuff here, it all begins to change. Here, the same thing. Again, hopefully that's all on screen and you can see it. I'm just going to get some all along here. This is why we didn't do too much in the way of painting these cables, because I knew that was also going to be catching some of the object source lighting. And all this is, it's the very transparent fluorescent paints with the very transparent orange transparent and the yellow transparent. You're probably sensing a theme. See all that stuff right there? I could have done all kinds of colors, painted wires green and blue and everything else, and then painted this over the top and went, well, gee, that wasn't an ideal use of time. And then with each of these successive layers, now I can say, you know what, okay, here it really needs to be intense. Because let's grab our example piece here. So you can see how what we're going to do, how that's going to, all of our different glowing effects, how that's going to impact the rest of the figure. I need to get some down into here too. Just a touch of that here. But now here, there can't be any because basically this big old shape is just blocking it. Big old shape right there. Just blocking it. And now we're going to have some nice differences here on the engine. Let's see, just how far does that extend back? So we're putting this here. So yeah, I have to put a fair amount back here, but not too much. Now by having all the object source lighting here, there's another element of this. Well, is it, why do that? That's a whole lot of extra work. Well, actually, in many ways, it saved a bunch of extra work because now the eye is just going to be completely absorbed into all of this stuff. It's going to be just sucked into all of these lighting effects instead of us having to add all of that individual color everywhere. I think you can also see why I'm doing this with that big old gigantic extra piece not sitting on the figure too. Here, let's get a little more of our orange going this way. So I do have to remember which way that smoke is sort of pointed. I think that's going to need a little bit of edge light. We're doing that same bit on a lot of our mechanisms here. Again, this is why the engine here did not get all kinds of extra touches with the when we were adding those midtones and lights, because it didn't make much sense. See, I'm kind of staying away from the lighting some of these areas now. Here, let's cut it. We got to get some of the yellow in here. We got to start to lighten this up a bit. Sorry about that. This is definitely right in here, ground zero for all of our brightest lighting effects, so have to keep that in mind. But as long as I stay with those transparent paints, it's almost like a little bit of a governor there. I can't make these things too light too fast because they're pretty darn transparent. Because that's another one of those pitfalls with the object source lighting, is it can get really light really fast. That's not really ideal. It's any of these effects, rust, chipping, object source lighting, reflected light, those are all things where too much of a good thing is just too much of a good thing. And it can be difficult to self-regulate there because you just get excited. You see how it looks, and you say, "Wow, that is so fantastic." And the next thing you know, it just sort of overwhelms and overtakes everything. Because remember, you know, his face here is supposed to really be the thing that you're looking at. Speaking of which, let's get a little more of our orange over here. Kind of lighting his face from behind. So once again, another added form of interest. Still working with our big old craft brushes. But with each time I go into that, you saw me go into the regular yellow, the ProAcryl standard yellow. This starts to get, yes, it gets lighter, but it gets more opaque. So I don't have quite the advantage that I did. Now these actually need to be lighter here, because there's a light source there. What am I doing? I gotta make sure there's enough light here. Well, and this too, except I will have to scrape some of this away just to make sure that I am going to put a dot of glue there just to make sure everything holds. We certainly need to get some more. I want to focus in on this area for the lightest colors of our object source lighting. I do look forward to getting the big old blob attached on there, or my Cheeto, as we're going to call it. There's the great blazing Cheeto. Here, let's... And look, I'm nowhere near the lightest light at this point. I have a long ways that I can go, and that's a good thing. This is fun. I haven't actually had a chance to, ironically enough, do a lot of object source lighting or the fiery type stuff with the ProAcryl paints. I've done this on other CreatureCaster miniatures, but I haven't actually had a chance to utilize the ProAcryls, and they're handy. Like I said, the yellows and the oranges, they cover. And that's usually when you're trying to do something like the fiery type stuff, it takes forever to get those oranges to cover the way you want them to. Here, let's grab some of that transparent orange, speaking of which. I'm going to find myself a few lighter spots on the cable here. I think now you really see why I did not. Remember, I put that little bit of green here. I barely painted anything on all of this stuff. Well, now I think it's revealed why. I probably saved myself a good 20-30 minutes of not painting any of that stuff. And the advantage of these filbert, well, I call them filbert brushes. They're not the craft brushes. is that I can keep working without having to go back to the palette every 2 seconds. See that, getting some nice little glow there in the engine parts. But then where I think an area is maybe going to be in recessed, where it's not going to catch as much light, make sure we don't hit that. So see, now we're starting to get us a little bit of difference there now. Okay, I don't want to get any more, I don't think, on the hand there, but I think want to just get a bit more, sneak a little more into here. Now, let's see how much do I have to do on the top part here. Let's put that in place. Yeah, see, I don't want to get too much up there. But I do need to get a little bit lighter here. Okay, let's grab a little more of that. I'm just going to put it right here. Let's grab some more of that's our fluorescent there. Let's start to mix these two together a little more directly. Don't want to forget my transparent orange. See how much lighter that is now. Yeah, that's definitely significantly lighter. I'm going to even go with a touch more. This is just a straight up yellow with the fluorescent. I guess that's the other little pitfall too, is making the object source lighting away from the source just too intense, and it's just an easy thing to have happen. Sometimes no matter how often you practice that, it can just be a thing that happens. I've done a ton of different videos on object source lighting. Every conceivable color, magentas, greens, blues, you name it. Good chunk of those, again, were patron videos, but I'll try and find some regular public access ones that people can look at. Put some links to those. Now this is the fun part here. This last, well, I don't want to say the last bits of it, but this is that part where you really start to bring out the intensity. Yeah, look at this. On his face here and some parts of the hair. And this is the stuff that I knew I was going to be able to do, but I had to have the patience to wait for it. So again, more of these metal areas here. We're just giving them, I just call them sort of linear highlights. It just marches up this way. It's not wrapped all the way around evenly. Now let's see what his face looks like there with that little bit of backlighting on it. Like I said, as soon as I saw this thing, that was what I was visualizing. So see, cool colors now, that allows some of this really intense light orange warm stuff to really start to shine. Alright, I need to also do the same thing here. Some of this needs to get brighter. And I might even do a little more of that once it gets glued on. I'm sure I will. Because once it's on there, then I can see, oh yeah, I need to do a little more here. Maybe even the opposite. I might say, ooh, I need to tone it down over here. Yeah, this is... I've been dying to see that result for a while. Now I'm going to go back into the transparent orange because I think down in here there's some interesting things I can do. Just to give that a little bit of... Yeah. I don't want it to end up looking like rust effects. That's not what we want. Now back into the much lighter bits. So, and all of these wires, all this stuff, I don't want to say it takes away the task of rendering all of it, but it kind of does. And yet it's all set up, all those original, remember the purples and greens that we mixed together. I'm going to put that back in here again. Oh, hey Gary, how's it going? Are we going to have another Gary war in here? Because, believe it or not, the name of the person who sculpted that miniature that we were painting with the Gary War, his name is Gary. So yeah, there's Garys everywhere. There can be only one though. But of course the weapon of choice has to be a craft brush. We're just making this even brighter. Oh yeah, geez, we need our light highlights on these spikes here. My goodness, what am I doing? How could I have forgotten those? Now look at how that, see a nice cool green color as that sweeps around there. Now one thing that does happen with the fluorescent paints is it sort of drives the camera bonkers. And you don't necessarily see the intense brightness of the fluorescent paints. It just, the camera kind of goes crazy trying to record it. Yes, ready with the cheapest craft brush. Yes. And it's we've got those Cotmans on, well, at least I hope they're on the way. I'm pretty sure I clicked on the order to actually order them. So you'll see them, you know, on more of these videos, on the Dark Sword videos. But when you do the Patreon thing, if you do that, the Army Painting pledge level, that's the $15 a month one, and we had a few folks select that today. I will send you in an email links to, at this point it is now officially well over 200 hours of videos. That is no joke. There's just that many Army Painting series, there's that many Dark Sword series or episodes out now. Heck, I think it was at 200 just by ReaperCon, and that was weeks ago. And we certainly keep adding more. And I try to combine as many techniques as I can, because I know people, they'll do these saying, well, here it's all about object source lighting or whatever. Well, that's fantastic, but it doesn't necessarily show you how to combine those techniques, because I mean, what miniature are you doing where there's just one technique to paint the whole thing? You're probably going to need more than just one technique. Or what happens is people will just sort of show you one part of the miniature, which when they do that, and it's all in isolation like that. Well, again, how are you going to be able to paint all the rest of that miniature without that information? It's a little bit like the Great British Baking Show, and you've got the technical challenges, and Prue and Paul, or Mary and Paul, as the case may be, just say, well, put it in the oven. Well, how long? What temperature? They gave you instructions maybe on what to mix, but not much after that. And I try to give you just something more comprehensive with each episode. How do you combine the non-metallic and object source lighting together like we did here? How do you combine a different skin tone together? So now we've got the oranges and greens. We've got all this stuff starting to play off of each other here. But now we have smaller brushes. It's not all just craft brushes, but if you use them for most of it, well, your brushes are going to last a lot longer. So now we are really looking for some of our latest lights here. Let's get a bit more of the yellow in there. And that definitely needs some. I just see there was lacking a bit of the highlights there. I certainly want to get these little edges here. Hopefully that's actually on screen. I think it is. Alright, let's hit the top of these cables here. Again, because we're right at where the light source is. Got to get these here. And you can still see some of the original kind of purplish, bluish gray there. I can still see that. It hasn't gone away completely. And if I want to tone this down, I could take some of the transparent red and some of those the colors that we used to glaze early on. Well, what's to say that I don't do some glazes over this to knock it down a little bit? Here, let's just because this, now that I've put it on here several times, I'm starting to know where the heck it's supposed to go. Yeah, okay, that's good. Like down here, I might get in with some glazes and actually tone that down a little bit. Let's get a little more of the yellow in here and get some lights on the engine over here. I just remember early on when there was really nothing here. Was not doing very much on that. Well, I knew this was coming. So I could save myself plenty of time and energy not painting stuff that was just going to get covered over anyways by all of this dramatic lighting. Yeah, that is really... I enjoy the heck out of this. I need to... Again, this is that transparent orange. We're mixing it with the fluorescent because I'm going to hit some things here. Let's get some on the base. Now, it's got to be really approached carefully because otherwise it's just going to look like rust. I'm just going to very, very gently, ever so gently put a little bit down here. Not much at all. Just kind of give it the impression that some of that has sort of worked its way. Here, let's fade some of that out. Again, just making the brush more like a filbert brush. Can even wipe some away with my finger if I need to. As always. And I just dust a little more of that over these edges. So you saw how much time I was able to save on all of that stuff. Tremendous amount of time saved. I do need to... I almost forgot this edge here, and sometimes that can happen. And that would have been difficult to do once that big old Cheeto was glued on in place. And boy, there will definitely be some folks not super thrilled that I keep calling that a Cheeto. Speaking of which, we'll bring the Cheeto back in. So that's where it needs to go. Let me see if I can find something like this. So this is bright ivory. It seems like it's a white. It actually has some yellow in it. I'm going to put that over here. Again, hopefully it's all on screen for you. I know sometimes the palette slides around a little bit. Apologize about that. A touch more. Because we still need the most intense light areas here. We haven't actually reached those yet. Because we're sort of at the epicenter of that glow. And certainly along this portion is where that needs to be. Darn near white hot. We're going to get this a little sharper. And sometimes I just wipe it away. I need myself another edge line there. And let's get some lights right in here. And that was just adding a little bit of that, the ivory, and as I said, I don't know, what, 15, 20 minutes ago, the more of those lighter colors you add, like that ivory there, then this really starts to become opaque. You lose all that transparency that your transparent paints have given you. It makes sense, obviously. Now, I need to do this along this top edge too. And this is where using those craft brushes saves brushes like this for these finer elements. Since these are metal, I'm just trying to capture a bit more brightness there. Now on his face, I don't know how much more. I want to just catch a few lights here to sort of, again, backlight it. It's cheating a little bit. I'm pushing the envelope of these highlights because I want that turn in his face. That's what I want to do. I see I need to continue this right down into here. Okay. I think that is just about ready for this object here. So I'm going to go back to my bigger brushes here. I even now have a little bit of red that's working its way in. And remember, we have a long ways to go with our dark there. So I'm going to just leave this over there. I know it's out of focus, but you can still see it. Actually, that's a little too much paint on the brush. You can see how we've feathered this out. And you notice how we're focusing more on the upper part of the surface away from where the glow is. Because if we make the part that's by the miniature itself dark, well, what was the point of doing all that object source lighting? And I can still go back in here and work with some other shapes. Go back down in here, reinstate some lighter colors. That's not a problem. Yeah, at this point, this is where the Cheeto starts to look like a bloody Cheeto. But I think it's also going to start to look more like the shape it's meant to be. And we also want it to get to be more red the farther away it is from that initial source of heating. And that's not a dry brush. That is, there's plenty of paint in there, but because it is so translucent, it just kind of looks like it's a dry brush, but again, it's really not. And as I do subsequent darker layers over this, it's going to start to match our sample piece, which is probably blocked by my hand right now. I'm just going to guess. Now there's also more separate little billowing elements in this here than there is on my original one, because it's, again, they're two different sculptors, so that's okay. And I know this is not the most grandest of things to see. Again, the painting of the bloody Cheeto, but such is life. Not everything can be super dramatic. Now we're going to go more into some red. I'm going to take a touch of the purple in there. Little tiny bit of that black. Just gets another stage darker. See, I think you can see how I just smushed this brush out on the palette and made it even that much more of a filbert brush. But now, as this works its way closer towards the smoke color and away from just a straight up fire, we really see all of these different bumps on this. So once it's glued on there, and I don't have to actually grab it by this part anymore, I can go back in and yeah, once I glue it on, I'll be able to finish much more of this. There we are. But even as dark as this is, and I'll show you our test piece again. Well, not test piece, our more of our example piece. Let's see how much darker that is. So we have a way that we can go yet. But what I'm gonna, I'll just start to use the. Here's some of the. That's the color I'm looking for. It's like a brown black here. There's mahogany. This one. It's basically just a really dark brown, but it's a little less. Here, let's get that. There we go. It's a little more on the dingy side, for lack of a better term. There. So again, we'll see. We're going to spread that out. And now, I'm going to dry that a little more. And again, with each layer of this that I do, remember those initial ugly colors that we did? Looked so horrible. Those just get lighter and lighter. And I suppose I could have just, heck, I could have even primed this thing, practically the fluorescent colors. But not everybody has access to the airbrush things, and I kind of wanted to show, well, how can you take advantage of something like the ProAcryl paints where it can be so translucent, but then also you have those yellows that are so opaque that they can cover. See all of those brighter things down deep inside, those remain. Those stay behind. And there's still enough of the transparent orange and such in here. There's even some of the original fluorescent paint in there. Now we'll let a little, see, make it even darker now, even dingier. Now it really starts to actually look like something. There. Now something like this, ideally, I would spend many, many hours painting it, but you didn't have many hours to watch me paint it. You had, well, hopefully you have a few, and you can always go back and watch these. Heck, there's some battle reports. I know there's one that I've been trying to watch for 3 days. It's only an hour and something long, but I can't be watching that while I'm doing these, can't I? So that meant basically only watching a little bit of it here and there. That's all I could do. Sometimes that's what you do with these. You just watch a little bit of them at a time when you can. I'm actually going to go back into a little bit of my red here. Back into that red. And what I'm trying to do here is tone down I can even go back into my orange there. Because as this fire starts to work its way up, I want that to actually technically cool down because, well, red is cooler than white as far as flame goes. And if I have too abrupt of a transition right to the brownish color or whatever, that's one way of taking care of business. So this is some of that transparent black, and the whole idea is not to make it black, but again, kind of dingy that up a little bit. Darken it down. And then actually I have to go sort of over the top of this with some lighter grays in some places so that it looks more like smoke. Here, let's get some darker colors here and the outer reaches of that. Now I'm going to see if I can't just glue that thing on there. But first, I need to do a couple of things. And first thing I do is, now this is that Badger Stynylrez primer that I told you about at the start. Here, let's not snap this. Yeah, really have to scrape away, and that is, again, that's the Stynylrez here. Looks at the moment like something from KFC. Yeah, that's, well, there's 15 herbs and spices in there, I would say. We got plenty of colors. All right. Now, hopefully, this won't be too uncooperative. Let's see what we get. Now I'm going to throw a little more glue on there. This is basically a gel type of glue here. The idea is that it sort of fills in some of the gaps. So I'll hold this in place and we'll just talk about it here. So you can see what we've done with the face. Now obviously I'd like to get some more lights down into the crevices of my fire, but that's just going to have to happen probably afterwards because you are not going to be able to see that really. So let's just set this aside and let that hopefully dry, and we'll go back to our, where is he? To this. Because, yeah, we haven't forgotten about this. We'll go back into some of our grays here. That's that greenish gray. We have a little bit of pink into that. Make it more neutral. Like so. And we can always, now this is the, I believe this, yeah, it's the top edge. I just had to see where the hand was. And yeah, okay. Now I could make this thing be glowing or whatever, and these could be more some kind of power cable type things emanating from that. Like I said, I don't have time to do all of those things right now. I still want to actually get to some rust on some parts. Say on the base. And what I'll do is I will, either on the, probably on the blog, I will post, and on my Instagram too. It's just Wappelius Instagram. If you want to see some of the finished images, basically, so the final gallery of things that were painted on the live streams, that's a good place to check them out. And as I mentioned, Jason and I were going to be, I have a second one of these, and that is being prepped. And Jason and I, we'll each paint one of these. So, yep, some of you will see that again. Because this one it was really, really fun. And now I'll have an example to work from, which is really cool. So here it's a little bit more of the seafoam green. We're going to work that up in here. Now I'm not quite sure if I actually have a side cutters in here with me, so I might have to struggle to pull this off of the off of my pin here. And it's just a dowel rod. We used to paint these things on pin vices until we realized, well, with the vast amount of figures I need to do, that's a lot of pin vices. And dowel rods are cheaper than pin vices. Hey, Bethany, how's it going? Over here it is 4:31 a.m. Yep, you heard that right. It's been a long, long, long day of painting. Because 12 hours ago, I was painting. Huge surprise. And I'm still painting now. Again, to me, not a surprise. To most folks, not a surprise. Let's get a little bit of the skin tone onto this too. At least some of the lighter skin tones. Like that. Over here. And I'm just waiting on our big old fire thing that we just attached to dry. So just working on the hand here. Now I don't think the hammer is really going to maybe on the back side it might. Sorry, I was off camera. Now, what about back here? Yeah, I think we got that pretty well. Yeah, we didn't do too bad there. It's 11:30 in the morning in Germany. All right, let's set that back out of the way again. Let's get back to this. Gonna grab some of my greens here. And I'm trying to make basically a little bit of reflected cooler light on the opposite side of this. Because it can't all be about just the object source lighting. We need some stuff besides that. I'm going to get myself a nice little highlight to go in there. And then there's sort of a sawtooth type of a thing right here. For now, I'm just going to throw these little bits of lighter color there. I have to go in with some darks there anyway. And now we'll find ourselves some other lights that don't have anything to do with glowing stuff. This is, again, a little bit more along the lines of some greens. There. Remember, I also wanted to get into a little bit of the rust as well. Mostly just on the base. I also wanted to show maybe how you can use a little bit of the transparency to be able to do that. I'm gonna find a few highlights along there, and then certainly here. Now I could obviously do all kinds of chipping and damage and everything else on that, but maybe I'll do that on the one with Jason, because I think that's going to be probably at a more leisurely pace than this. Because, like I said, Jason's not going to try and do his entire figure in a few hours like what we're doing here. At least I'm just guessing. I'm just going to postulate that for now. So I get more of that green, kind of a mint green with a little bit of the purple side dish there. Now we've gone lighter and lighter. Let's work in the opposite direction here. Let's go a little darker in some places, and I'm basically taking some dark brown and some green. And we're just, we've added lots of lighter colors. Maybe now it's time to go back to some of the darker colors. Oh, thanks, Mandalore. How's it going? Oh, thanks, Andre. Much appreciated. Yeah, I knew people would, in the beginning of this thing, really freak out with what was going on, because it was just going to be such an unorthodox way of painting things. I know it can be really weird. Here, I am going to try and do a little bit of a semi sort of wet blend here. There. Get a little lighter color down there. There we go. Here, let's go back to that lighter color again. It's a little bit of wet into wet. Well, look at the difference between that side and that side now. Yeah, I'm glad it's fun and not too traumatic. There's some folks who are convinced that I take a bit of a sadistic delight in tormenting folks as they see this and go, "What in the world is he doing?" What I'm realizing is that I definitely need another shape right here. We didn't even as much of a transition as I tried to create there, that wasn't enough of a transition. So we're trying to inject one more level of transition right there. Here, let's grab our lighter color here, and that's that ivory. I need to hit some of these guys. Like so. And feel free, obviously, for you guys, when you're doing yours, you can take as long as you want. You don't have to do it this fast. And also, doesn't necessarily have to be all at once. You can paint it to a certain level, take it off of the dowel rod, take it off of the, I like here, my little blue tack thing like this. You use it in your game, and then you go back to paint some more stuff on it. There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do that. Now again, going back to some of the lighter color here, because now I'm going to get some of this lighter color way down into my crevices there. See what I just did? There, you can see it. Because now I know where I need some of that light to go. I've got to avoid the super glue though. And here I might just, throw a little bit of green stuff there. Here, let's do some edges on this. Yeah, it needs some of these little vertical edges too. Did all the horizontal ones, but not those. Let's see what I need here. Yeah, I need some of these lighter things down in here, like that. Couple more of these. Oh, for sure in there. And remember, there's going to be that touch of fluorescent paint in all of this that I'm using right now. Yeah, I think I got to continue just some of that yellow over there. It just makes sense. Let's see what we need to do here. Yep, everything just kind of comes to life all at once. We even tell people, because they'll ask for work in progress pictures, and we'll say, well, you just don't want to see them. You basically want to see this thing when it's done, because it goes from not done to done, like you see, and all of a sudden, boom, it just out of nowhere, all of a sudden, things just happen. Now here, what do I need to get on there? I need some more transition here. This is too... We've got this rough transition right here, and I might just do something like this. Here, let's get some more of the orange there. Yeah, it needs this. Yep. It's a little bit like what we did over here. Starting to do some of that down over here too. Now, I just got some orange now. Thin this down. This is mostly transparent orange and stuff. That's better. Like I say, right here, we certainly need some. Because it was kind of a grayish orange. It really wasn't registering as orange. It's kind of like a dingy gray. Well, not gray anymore. Yeah, that's much better. One of the reasons we kind of had that happen is because, well, we were using the transparent orange and we were just doing that basically, remember the dry glaze over the top of it? Yeah. This is what I mean about you establish it and then you go back in and you refine it. See, even here, what I can do is You see that? Yeah. One little stripe right there. Look what that does. It enhances our highlights there. Creates a little more of an interesting shape there, I think. This certainly could be more orange and less kind of yellowy brown. A highly technical painting term right there, yellowy brown. And I'm just gonna make a few areas of reference there. Now, some orange on his hair maybe. Now, some orange here. Certainly some orange here. And that's just that straight up orange instead of, again, the more dingy orange that we had. Let's go into his ear like this. There. Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing I did elsewhere over here. So hopefully that's starting to translate relatively well. And I'm going to get myself some orange down in there. Because again, it was a little dingy. This is, again, the part where we can start to play off of what we did, what's there, and just see it. We're working it even a little bit darker orange almost. I can do maybe some of the same thing. Here it's less like rust and more like the orange from the flame. Let's see if we can't darken down. Yeah, a few aspects of this. There we go. Because it was starting to look a little bit like rust. Now it looks a little less like rust and more like a little more like some flame reflecting into it. Speaking of rust, I'll try to get to the rust if I can. But I will be painting a whole entire second one of these. So you'll be able to see a more complete lesson of that. And of course, I've already got one Creature Caster painting series on the Patreon page. There's 4 more that are just under construction basically at this point. And by 4 more, I mean series of 2 or 3 episodes. Because even that first one that I showed you, that Lady of Anguish, and the kind of the opening session there, that was 3 episodes. Because we got to talk about the basing of it, talking about the wings. Now at that point, these ProAcryls had only just come out. They were really brand new at that time. So I was getting used to them. I hadn't really tried them much at all. And starting to add in now a little more. There's even, just for some reason, I just want some orange to work its way in there. Maybe it's bouncing off of this stuff here. Now, maybe I need to also go in with some even darker oranges, and some of these crevices down in here. Again, stuff that you can't really see too much, so I won't dwell on it a lot. But what it does is it makes some of my metal edges look a little more crisp. And all of this stuff I'll probably soften up too. You know, where we've got the more some hash marks here from the initial brush strokes, but that's what all that was just to kind of place these things, see where should they go, and then work from there. Yeah, let's get a little touch of dark there, and then whatever this little pattern is here, make that darker too. We need to get a little more shading on these guys. There's some light and some middle tone, but there's really not much in the way of any kind of dark colors on those. See if I can get some highlights in the other direction there, because that'll make them look a little more like metal if they're not all just entirely shades of orange. And I really don't want to be leaning my hand on that too much. You know, something like this fire here, you could pin that, obviously. Give it a little extra strength and stability. And as I said, once he's done, I'll post finished pictures to the blog. Heck, I might even do another short live session on him to finish him off. I don't know, maybe tomorrow night or something, or it might be for the patrons. Because I try to give them there's a lot of special things that I do for them. Maybe something that's a brand new material or a technique or whatever that I try to do for the first time, like the vellum plants. So I need to let this just dry for a second here. Where are you? Here we go. So this is there's another patron video, and it was all about showing them how to use these new plants. So, like I said, the Dark Sword level, that's actually only 12 bucks, or 10 bucks a month. 12 bucks. It's only 10 bucks a month. And when you sign up for that particular pledge level, well, I've done 25 episodes now of painting Dark Sword. So, yeah, you're going to get a lot of videos. No matter which way you shape it, whether it's basing or Dark Sword, I've done lots of those, and there's many more on the way. Like I said, in some of these areas where I've got mostly just lighter colors, I will go in with some glazes. But right now it's pushing 5 o'clock in the morning. So I do want to say thanks to everybody that's been in here. And if you want to be notified of these, I guess you have to subscribe, but you also have to, I guess it's click the bell and click all notifications, because I've found this out myself for the people I've subscribed to it. If I want to see their stuff all the time, I have to do all of the different aspects of, click the bell, all notifications. Otherwise, I will get sporadic notifications. So thanks to Comitarian, Mandalore, Andre, Hey, Bethany, she was in here too. And, of course, one of the Garys. A couple of Garys, of course. And Tyler, first, last. Tim, everyone that showed up. It's always appreciated. So I'll catch you guys again on the next episode. Yeah, this guy was really fun. I've been having a lot of fun on this guy here. He's really nifty. So stay tuned, and we'll catch you again on the workbench.